Jason Epperson of RV Miles sits down with us and we have a great chat about the RV life. Welcome to RV Out West. I'm your host, Brooks. My Family of Four's base camp is located in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and our RV adventures radiate out from there. Please grab a mug of coffee and join us as we discuss RVing around the American West. From sweet camping spots, gear and equipment, to tips and tricks, we've got you covered. We are RV Out West. Jason and Abby of RV Miles have spent 7 years living full-time on the road, and it was only recently during their latest travels that they made it to the Pacific Northwest. If you're not familiar with RV Miles, they produce a podcast, have a YouTube channel, and put out some of the greatest RV content on a national level, from news roundups to them sharing about their travels and experiences. I've only known them in person for a very short time, but they are some of the kindest people, and when my wife and I met them for the first time in real life, we instantly became friends. Jason was here out west for the Puyallup RV show, and we made some time to sit down and record a conversation. Jason, thank you for joining us here on RV Out West. I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'd like to ask you first, can you share just kind of a brief bio about yourself and kind of what's the love story with how you and Abby met?
I'm from Illinois. Abby's from Kansas City, Missouri. We both went to Columbia College in Chicago and met there. So I moved up to Chicago for college, right after high school. And so did she, but we didn't really get along in college at all. We sort of knew each other, weren't really fans of each other. But once we got out and started working in the theater industry, we went to Columbia for theater. Abby has an acting degree, and I have a lighting design degree. And we started working in the industry, and we ended up doing a show together, and sort of fell for each other there.
That was it. Yeah, nice,
that
cool.
Was it. Yeah, so we started dating. We had a kid. Then we got married.
Fair enough.
And then had 2 more, and lived in Chicago for about 15 years or so before we decided that it was time to make a change.
And what was some of the impetus for making some of that change?
We had sort of just gotten into camping.
Are we talking like tent camping?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we took a tent camping trip to the Great Smoky Mountains and several like local around the Chicago area, and we're really enjoying that. And then, in that process, we're watching like lots of YouTube videos and stuff about camping and places to camp and gear and all that. I started to see these bus conversion videos and started watching some of these bus conversion videos. And I got really excited about the idea of converting a school bus into an RV, because I sort of had some of those skills being in technical theater, knowing about, set construction and electricity and all that sort of stuff. And I thought I could handle that. And you could get school buses for fairly cheap. These, the whole idea is that these buses may only have 90,000 miles on them, and the school districts just sell them off automatically after 10 years or so, and you get them for ours. We ended up getting for $3,000. So the idea was that we would go just camp a lot. We would take some trips and head out further.
Did you have a place to even store that bus when you brought it home?
No. So we were in the process of figuring out how we might do that, how we might get a bus and travel. Our kids were homeschooled already, so we knew we could take long stretches of time. We had started a theater industry publication that we were running, so our jobs were computer-based. But at the same time, our landlord was raising our rent by like $500 a month. And we thought, well, all these other people that we're seeing build these buses are doing it full time. They're just living in them. We could probably do that for a year. So, but one popped up, and we went and grabbed it like that the next day, I think. And it was in Ohio. So we had to drive like 6 hours to get it. And I drove it back for the first time into Chicago.
Nice.
Basically. Abby was calling to find a place to store it on our way back. And we found a place in Hammond, Indiana, which is just right across the Illinois-Indiana border from Chicago.
And how far was it then for you guys to get from your apartment to it when you need to go work on it?
It took me about an hour and 15 minutes to drive down to it to work on it. So I would go down until all the batteries on my tools died. We had no electricity down there until all the batteries on my tools died, and then I'd head home. Eventually, I ended up being smart and bought a generator because I knew we'd need a generator on the road. But yeah, we spent about 6 months building out a bus conversion. We never totally finished it. It wasn't perfect, but we still had ties to things going on in Chicago. We were working on certain things. So once our lease was up, we moved into it, and we sort of lived in the Chicago area in it for 8 weeks or so before we actually started traveling.
And how old were your kids at the time when you guys took off on this?
So my kids are all 3 years apart. Right now they're 16, 13, and 10. I think our youngest was 3 or 4 when we did this. So oldest was probably around 10, 11.
And you were 7 years on the road full time, right?
Yeah. So we just recently stopped being full timers about 6 months ago. But yeah, for 7 years we've been traveling full time.
What were some lessons that you learned from your 7 years of life on the road?
Ooh, okay. So
like top hits, big bullet points.
So big thing for me is that there's all these really amazing places that everybody says you can go, that you see the photos on social media and all that sort of stuff, these amazing places, and they're great. But we also, I think, found just as much wonder, joy, fun, beauty in off the beaten path places, and places that just other people don't think are special places to go to. Like, we've found really cool things to do in Nebraska and North Dakota and Arkansas, states that a lot of people think to skip. North Dakota, literally their slogan is save the best for last, because they did some research and found that people that visit all 50 states often do North Dakota last.
North Dakota was number 49 for me. Alabama was last at 50. North Dakota was 49. And I desperately wanted to go to is it Thomas Jefferson? No, what's the national park there in
Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah, the Theodore Roosevelt. We had plans and reservations, and then something happened, and we had to make a last-minute decision to skip it. So I actually have plans sometime in my life to go back, because
it's wonderful.
I really want to go see it.
And so that was a big life lesson for me, but also, if we get a little more heady, like, the people are very similar everywhere around this country. There's always talk about, well, this is how New Yorkers are and this is how Southerners are. And there's a bit of that, but we're all more alike than we pretend we are.
Yeah.
So I think we're just all a little bit more alike, and that was really interesting to me. Something that really hit me hard through a lot of our early travels was there were several communities that we tended to hit early on that had gone through a major school shooting, and they would have like the hashtag whatever strong,
right,
all over community, all over town, and that, I don't know, there's something about that made me, I guess when I visit places, I don't always expect them to be towns where people live and hang out and get together and all that sort of stuff. So I think because of that kind of thing, we started to do a lot of like going to like local minor league sports games and stuff, and even like high school football games and things like that. Fun. And really enjoyed
the community,
doing
that way.
Community stuff as we traveled, instead of just hitting like the big time things. And that way you can also talk to folks and be like, what should I go do around here? What is school to do around here? So,
well, let me ask you this then. Is there anything you would do differently if you were now talking to the younger Jason?
Oh gosh. Well, the bus conversion was a bit of a bust. We loved it. It was set up great for us and everything. It ended up costing us way more money than we expected to spend.
I want to ask. So, what's the number on the final build between the $3,000 of buying it and your full build out? Will you share with us kind of what you?
Yeah, I want to say we probably ended up spending about, when all is said and done, after sort of some major repairs that ended up having to happen, probably $60,000.
That's
something
what I've
like
heard.
that. When we had budgeted to spend more like
20?
35,
Yeah, okay.
maybe. Yeah, probably closer to 20.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, we had to replace the transmission. The tires were all really expensive. We had some engine work done and all that sort of stuff that, like, I think we just got kind of unlucky with a bus that just wasn't in the greatest shape that we thought it was in.
Okay.
And that was probably the biggest mistake, that we maybe should have looked more for a different bus or spent some time doing the math on maybe would an RV have worked out better for us in the end, and perhaps it would have. I don't know.
And you guys have now had 3 RVs?
Including the bus, we've had 4 rigs. So
One of our listeners, Josh, wanted me to ask you, what rig are you considering transitioning to in this next phase of part-timing with your kids and your family?
So we have, right now we still have 2 RVs, and we're figuring out what to do. So we have a 43-foot fifth wheel that has been in storage for a while, through our last year of travels. And then for our last year, we have been in a 25-foot travel trailer, and it's very small for a family of 5, but it got us some cool places that we want to go to. It's too small. The fifth wheel's too big. So what we're thinking now is sort of like a small fifth wheel. We like towing a fifth wheel. We like the little bit extra space in it, but we're thinking of something, like in the 32-foot or less range, like a short fifth wheel.
Okay.
Is kind of where we're at this point.
Would you do a bunk?
Yeah,
in the back?
Still bunkhouse, yeah.
For the kids? Okay.
Yeah, we're working on it. We found an interesting bunkhouse that we really like. So
Okay.
yeah.
Stay tuned then.
Yeah.
Josh, stay tuned. All right. You've mentioned now that you and your family are back in a home. So how has life been as you and your family have kind of made the transition back into having roots?
Yeah.
And kind of settling into that way, and now RVing as part-timers. How's that been going for you guys?
Yeah, it's weird because we've really gone full hog into like living in a community. I mean, we've bought our office space, and our kids have joined like theater groups and stuff like that, and made a lot of friends and have a lot of activities and all that sort of stuff. So we've taken 6 months off of camping period. I mean, part of that is that it's winter. It has been winter, and the spring camping season has really only begun in the Midwest in the last couple weeks. Most of the campgrounds open around April 15th.
Okay.
So we've got our first camping trip happens in about 2 weeks. So so we haven't done it yet, but we've got several lined up for the summer, and we have known to take off from all these activities and stuff during the summer. But we're learning, since we've never really done it like this before, we're learning what it's like to book your trips around all that sort of stuff.
It's wild.
It's a thing. I mean, but part of it is we're also using being RVers to support some of that stuff. So our oldest is going to a film camp in Virginia this August. So we're going to all go out there in the RV and make a vacation out of it. So we're figuring out that kind of stuff.
Which is cool. I mean, we have one of our favorite campgrounds that's only 20 minutes, half hour from where we live. And so for just a Friday, like, hey, you know what? It's been crazy with work and life and after school curricular activities. Let's just get out of Dodge and go have a campfire kind of thing. And we can, split out of town.
Yeah. We're excited to do a bit of that as well. We've got lots of cool places to go to around us. We haven't even set the rigs up for the year or anything like that. So we're starting to figure that kind of stuff out now.
New shakedown trips.
Yeah.
I want to jump right into your Baja to Alaska trip, but where I really want to hone in on is your time in Oregon and Washington State. So share some of the things that you and your family saw along the way.
Yeah, so it's interesting because we did this big Baja to Alaska trip last year. It's like 5,000 miles from La Paz down in Baja where we started, in Seward, Alaska, which was really kind of the end terminus of our trip. And everyone wants to hear about Alaska or Baja, but we did find some of the best parts of that journey were through Northern California and Oregon and Washington and British Columbia, everywhere in between Baja and Alaska, we really enjoyed significantly. So, but it was our first time in the Pacific Northwest. We've never been up here before at all. We've spent a decent amount of time in California and, flirting with being around here, with being in Idaho and
Wyoming and the Tetons and that stuff. Yep.
Yeah. So, we stayed pretty much along the coast.
Okay.
We didn't really go much into the interior. Had a wonderful time. The interesting thing for us, I think, once we hit these areas, though, is that we really got into just not a lot of sightseeing, just a lot of like hanging out, camping, and camping at a cool place that was like along a beach. So we camped in several places along the coast in both Oregon and Washington. Loved being in and around Olympic. I think one of the cool things about Olympic for me is that there are places to access Olympic in many different ways where you're not necessarily near all the people. You're not going to like the big visitor center and all going out to the same trails from there. So we spent a decent amount of time on the southern coastal side of the park and going to all the sort of beaches around there, Ruby Beach, and we went to the Solduck Hot Springs.
I was going to ask if you hit the Solduck Hot Springs.
Yeah, that was a
Pretty
lovely
cool
campground to stay at too.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And I think for us again, it was a bit about visiting some of the smaller towns along the way. We loved Ashland.
Did you do any part of the Shakespeare Festival, or was that?
We didn't. We wanted to. We really wanted to.
That's
we
a
didn't
big
have the
miss.
time, and that's a big thing for.
I know.
And we know people that work there. Like we've always, a lot of Chicagoans would come out for the summer and spend time there. So we definitely want to come back and do that. So we really enjoyed Astoria.
Yeah, Astoria's
we had a
cool
good time in Astoria. We spent I think a whole week there.
And I remember you guys hit Bowie, but that is a really good beer town.
Yeah.
Lots of cool breweries, and for how small that town is, there's a lot of great craft beer there.
Yeah.
And seafood.
Yeah. We the food scene and then brewery scene up here is pretty awesome. We had some really incredible meals and ate at a lot of breweries that were just phenomenal. Port Angeles, Washington was also a really cool place for us. We thought we were like pricing houses up there.
Do you know what's cool about that place?
What?
It's in a rain shadow. Have you heard about this?
Mm-mm.
So everybody knows the Washington State, we get a lot of rain and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But Port Angeles and Sequim have a huge retirement community because in the entire state, there's a rain shadow there, and they get the least amount of rainfall in the state.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we loved it then.
Yeah.
So we got really lucky. We got hit with a lot of rain in Central California, but through the rest of that entire trip, we had almost no rain. And, we're along the coast the whole way up through Canada into Alaska, and everybody that left a couple weeks before us, it was just constant rain.
When was the time again? What time were you passing through the state?
So we were passing
what month?
We were passing through Washington. I think that would have been May.
Okay.
Yeah, because we didn't start moving up into Canada until June.
You did get lucky.
Yeah.
Summers here don't start until after 4th of July.
Yeah. We were. It was a little early season. We were kind of a lot of folks that head up to Alaska go a little bit later than we did because they're trying to avoid cold, and it wasn't that cold, but we were a little bit colder than a lot of folks want to deal with. But
what surprised you the most about the area?
I didn't really have any conception of all of the islands and the ferries and all that. And putting the RV on several ferries to go to places like Bainbridge Island and Deception Pass and stuff was really neat. I didn't really realize how far it is to get to some places too,
Right.
up and around here, because obviously you have to get on ferries, or you have to go way. You might be able to see Seattle across the way from Bainbridge Island, but it takes a long time to get around over there. So that was really interesting to me. But the coastline is just phenomenal. I mean, I have seen pictures and I knew what things looked like and stuff like that, but like to actually be here and see it and to just it's a wonderful smell up here. The pine and the coast mixing together. Like I think there's something about that that you don't get anywhere else, really. I just really, really appreciate like the feeling like you're in a different world here.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Where do you wish you had spent more time at when you were here? If you had another week, where would you have wanted to spend more time?
Everywhere. Wish we would have spent a little more time, but I wish we had been able to actually spend more time in Seattle when we were here, because we're city people too, so we like visiting cities big time. It's a big part of our travels. A lot of RVers don't, and that's not their thing, and that's fine. But for us, we really like to visit cities, and we had one day in Seattle. We left the RV on Bainbridge Island, took the ferries and all that sort of stuff, and came into the city for a day. And I would have loved to spend a good week in Seattle, and really be able to do all the things. We have been fortunate enough to come back, just Abby and I, for the Seattle RV show, and got to spend a little bit more time here. But next time, we didn't do Rainier at all. So
well, then that's you kind of mentioned it, but where's one place that was on your list that you just didn't even get to?
Yeah, it's Rainier.
Yeah, okay.
Rainier and Crater Lake.
Okay,
we had intended to do Crater Lake, and we camped maybe 45 minutes from Crater Lake, but it was just still way too snowy to get up there.
Okay.
The folks we traveled with, Jamie and Clay and their family, they actually went up and did play in the snow a bit for a day, but we didn't. But we had intended to spend a few days up in and around Crater Lake and didn't get to do that either. So that's a big one.
There's always more time. There's more time, more things to see. What advice or suggestions would you have for someone considering an RV trip here in the Pacific Northwest?
Ooh, well, listen to Brooks. I think, as with all places, there's so many different choices of where to go, and I think you just have to pare it down to be able to spend some time in some of these different areas and be able to,
I would agree,
sit in them for a bit instead of trying to bolt around all over the place. It's harder to do that here than a lot of other places, because you're not, the geography makes it a little bit more challenging. You're not like hopping on an interstate, to get from one place to the other.
You got to make time for the ferry boats.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Did you, actually real quick, how long were you guys here in the Northwest for? As you were passing through, were you a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? How long were you?
I want to say about 3 weeks.
So 3 weeks kind of as you crossed from California into Oregon.
Yeah.
And you came up the coast, up 101. And,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What upcoming trips do you all have planned for this season? So now this could not necessarily, obviously you talked about going to Virginia for film camp.
Yeah, so we have two big trips. So we've got a few short things. We're going to go camping up in Wisconsin, meet up back with the Schumachers again, who you've had on, who we traveled with over the course of the last year. But then we're doing this Virginia trip, but it's also going to take us down into the Carolinas and Florida and back. So that's kind of our big trip for the year. It's going to be 6 weeks. We're booking it to Virginia. And once we hit Virginia, we sit for 2 weeks, and then we start moving south, and we're We're going to Disney World in August, which is one of the dumbest things anyone can do, but we're doing it.
Okay.
So we're doing that trip.
Are you staying at Fort Wilderness then?
We are. We're spending half of our time at Fort Wilderness and half in a hotel.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes. So
Okay.
and then we're going to do a New Orleans trip in October. So we're going to spend about 2 weeks heading down to New Orleans.
Nice.
Yeah. So that'll be fun.
All right. Well, so where can people, I think most people are familiar with Jason and Abby of RV Miles, but if not, where can people follow along on your ventures? And then, of course, where's the best place that I should go for my RV news?
Well, you can find us on the RV Miles podcast. We do have a video version as well. So we're all over the podcast apps, and you can find it on its own YouTube channel, the RV Miles podcast YouTube channel. And then we have the main RV Miles channel where I do news roundups and stuff about things happening in the RV industry and camping and all that fun stuff.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here on RV Out West. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Brooks.
I'd like to share with you that I've added a new easy feature and a way to reach out to the show. You can now text the show. There is a link in the description right there in your podcast app with this episode and all future episodes. So if you have a question about RVing or a topic you'd like me to cover, or if you even just want to give a shout out and say hi, please feel free to use that link and say hello. Speaking of sharing, please remember that I'm looking for you to share with us about an app or a digital tool that you love to use to make your RV life a little bit easier. Simply visit rvoutwest.com and click on the link question to share with us about your favorite digital app or tool. I look forward to hearing from you. Again, please visit rvoutwest.com and click on the link question. Thanks again for listening to RV Out West. I sincerely appreciate it. Please give RV Out West a follow on Facebook and Instagram so you can follow along on our RV adventures or to simply just join in on the conversation. Please share with your RVing friends and family about this podcast. I sure would appreciate it. Next Monday's Pit Stop episode, we talk to both T-Mobile about their new internet options for RVers, as well as with Connectin Internet and how their internet solution is maybe a little bit different. If you're looking for connectivity while you're on the road, then this will be a great pit stop for you. Thanks so much for listening to RV Out West. Join us again next week. Please like and subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you choose to get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. I sure would appreciate it if you left a rating or a review of the show. Special thanks to Scott Holmes Music for providing us the intro song, We Are One. RV Out West can be found on Instagram and Facebook, where you can interact with us and follow along on our RV adventures around the Pacific Northwest. So get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon.